Welcome back again, and today I have an open letter from a lot of folks, only one of whom is from the United States, which I've highlighted, against the uncritical adoption of AI technologies in academia. And it flows pretty well, and it's not as long as it looks because there's a lot of references on it. But it's interesting that almost all of these folks are from the Netherlands. We got a couple from, well, one from Germany, one from Denmark, and then just Jed Brown from University of Colorado. So not quite sure why Radboud University is so heavily invested in this, but it is an interesting piece. And unlike the last time, I have not gone through and highlighted it the whole way. I just got what little bit you're seeing right now. So the culture of AI is imperialist and seeks to expand the kingdom of the machine. The AI community is well organized and well funded, and its culture fits its streams. It has high priests, greedy businessmen, and canny politicians. The U.S. Department of Defense is behind it all the way, and like communists of old, AI scientists believe in their revolution. The old myth of tragic hubris doesn't trouble them at all. Solomonides and let's love it off. This paper sets out our expert position on artificial intelligence technologies permeating the higher education sector, demonstrating how this directly erodes our ability to function, the harms to our fields and students that directly result from the technology sector corrupting our practices unchecked and unimpeded are manifold. From conflicts of interest that go unreported or are worn as badges of honor by colleagues, to the mushrooming of chatbots and software we are coerced to use, such as Microsoft Office. This is highly problematic because academia is meant to be a refuge for knowledge production, independent from ulterior motives. Weaving together teaching and research funding and academic freedom are presently under worldwide attack. The technology industry is taking advantage of us, sometimes even speaking through us, to convince our students that these AI technologies are useful or necessary and not harmful. Therefore, we argue that university leaders and administrators must act to help us collectively turn back the tide of garbage software which fuels harmful tropes and false frames to attain market penetration and increase technological dependency. When it comes to the AI technology industry, we refuse their frames, reject their addictive and brittle technology, and demand that the sanctity of the university, both as an institution and a set of values, be restored. If we cannot, even in principle, be free from external manipulation and anti-scientific claims, and instead remain passive by default and welcome corrosive industry frames into our computer systems, our scientific literature, and our classrooms, then we have failed as scientists and as educators. Marketing hype and harm in any given professional field, the specialized jargon is often necessary in order to exchange information more succinctly and specifically. It makes communication clearer, but in a cultish atmosphere, jargon does just the opposite. Instead, it causes speakers to feel confused and intellectually deficient. That way, they'll comply. Amanda Montel. AI has always been a marketing phrase that erodes scientific inquiry and scholarly discussion by design, leaving the door open to pseudoscience, exclusion, and surveillance. From its inception in the 1950s, the phrase artificial intelligence was used to sell research, spice up existing research programs, and attract funding. We propose that a 12-month, 10-man study of artificial intelligence be carried out during the summer of 1956 at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. The study is to proceed on the basis of the conjecture that every aspect of learning or any other feature of intelligence can, in principle, be so precisely described that a machine can be made to simulate it. An attempt will be made to find out how machines use language from abstractions and concepts, solve kinds of problems not reserved for humans, and improve themselves. We think that a significant advance can be made in one or more of these problems if a carefully selected group of scientists work on it together for a summer. John McCarthy et al., 1955. That makes me feel young. This proposal proved too tempting to ignore for colleagues and funders, both in the 2-month speeded delivery and the lofty goal of machines capturing every aspect of learning and feature of intelligence. It shows that once the start, imprecise jargon was used to make exaggerated promises with the goal to please investors, claims that fundamentally remain promises to this day. Although some differentiate AI and non-AI systems by appealing to generative models versus other types of AI, we are convinced that this does not bring clarity to the discussion, and we can fall headfirst into misuse of terminology and fostering industry hype. Creating that distinction, for example, makes classifiers such as Bernoulli naive Bayes, formerly a generative model AI technology similar to hyped applications. However, a statistical model like the Bernoulli naive Bayes classifier, which is used to analyze data, is unrelated to industry hype. By the same token, spell check software, which has not historically historically been composed of generative, no stochastic models, also falls under AI in some definitions, but not others. Similar technological problems also hold for phrases like agentic AI, systems that can autonomously adapt their environment, make context-sensitive decisions, and act upon them without any human intervention. Formally, systems like thermostats, microwave ovens, and traffic lights are agentic in this sense and fall under AI, but are not products we wish to proscribe. Informally, however, agentic is misused to include anthropomorphization that we cannot endorse. And I tried to spell this earlier today, and I could not. There is nothing privileged about generative AI, nor any AI technology in pedagogical or socio-technical sense. Importantly, all technology under our peer review as academics ought to fall under the same critical considerations. Thus, to frame generative AI as unique or dramatically different to other AI systems appears anti-intellectual. Recall that generative AI is a mere technical difference, i.e. which statistical distribution a system is capable of, not some substantive socio-technological departure, and so non-generative AI can be highly problematic, such as computer vision systems, which are used by military and the police. Such systems also comprise stolen data, requiring enslaved people to tag the data and produce biased results. The Uber diagram in Figure 1 demonstrates that such hyped labels, large language model, artificial neural network, generative model, chatbot, are interwoven in complicated ways such that their referents remain ambiguous. Importantly, this defiance holds under any rearrangement of the sets and elements. One cannot use these words without encountering additional problems and fostering ambiguity. We cannot escape this quagmire with more jargon, and so we are convinced that when the technology industry presents use cases for the label generative AI, such as for LLMs, but not Bernoulli naive naives, this is a strategy to elicit confused responses against generative AI, deflecting attention from other problematic AI systems. Makes sense. This feeds into the hype and obstructs a more general critique of similar unethical or unwanted AI systems. Should we continue down this road, the technology industry will slip through such a distinction, skipping from terminology to terminology, consolidating its power. It has indeed done so many times before by using phrases like buzzwords like big data, machine learning, deep neural networks, and permutations thereof. To further demystify the marketing phrase AI, we can examine the phrase constituent words. On the one hand, artificial intelligence is itself badly understood. When we compare artificial intelligence with other artificial systems, we see that, for example, artificial hearts do indeed pump blood. This is because pumping blood is a straightforward, understood aspect of a heart, artificial or otherwise. However, defining the function of a system does not translate so easily to AI. We cannot say what the function of intelligence in the general case is. As intelligence is not well defined, false claims of AI systems' cognitive abilities, such as suggestions that such systems can communicate, read, or give feedback, seem appealing at first glance. However, through such claims, fake purpose is invented, which can be exposed by cognitive science. This fake purpose is illustrated by the fact that AI often does not function as it says on the tin, leading to characterizations of AI as snake oil, a con, fake, and fascist. Oh yes, our favorite 2020 word. On the other hand, intelligence has a racist, sexist, classist, ableist inheritance that has not managed to shake off from superficial pseudoscience to eugenics and genocide. It is important to be aware that this sordid history rears its head in AI's present, making these systems especially harmful to minoritized and vulnerable groups. A very long set of authors on that. For all these reasons, we take the principled position that jargon infused with technology industry hype, as shown in Table 1, does not meaningfully explain. Similarly, separating AI's general term into good and bad leads nowhere except to blaring clarity and supporting hype. We strive to remain critical of the vocabulary the technology industry co-ops and deploys and to remain respectful of scientific terminology. Higher ed, critical thinking, expertise, academic freedom, all that good stuff. The culture of AI encourages a firm, even snide conviction that it's just a matter of time. It thrives on exaggeration and refuses to examine its own failures. Tom Athencio, I think, maybe. 1985. When it comes to AI technology used in a university context, it is important to focus on the relationship between technology and the society at large. The value of scholarly analyses of socio-technical relationships can be seen in cases such as the following. In the UK, a school shooting in 1996, the Dunblane massacre, led to stricter gun control laws. Since then, the socio-technical relationship between citizens and guns has remained unchanged, and therefore handgun privileges have not been reintroduced to the public. I am so sorry, UK. This relationship is different to that then captured by the right to bear arms in the United States. Such analyses illustrate how different societies may create different legal frames to match how they perceive their relationship to technology. Furthermore, problematizing social-technological relationships itself itself allows for reclaiming AI as a scientific field from the grips of industry or hype. Moreover, it allows for ruling out or reclaiming as a function of opinions about possible and impossible changes to our society, the technology, and their relationship. Here is the lovely figure 1. Sorry. I'm discussing superset AI in the background. LLMs are in orange. ANNs are in magenta. I don't know what an ANN is, and these intersect the generative adversarial network and the Boltzmann machine models in the purple because they are both generative and annotation. Maybe it's annotations. In the case of proprietary closed source models, ChatGPT and Siri, we cannot verify their implementation, so academics can only make educated guesses. Undefined terms, okay. To illustrate, consider driving in the general case versus driving a patient to the hospital. Obviously, both produce a series of known pollutants. However, driving a patient to the hospital has a different moral weight. Importantly, an expert paramedic driver has been taught to drive an ambulance regardless of fuel usage in emergency situations. However, the driver will not be taught to disregard fuel usage in other cases, nor avoid public transport for personal travel. Similarly, AI systems have nuances that we as experts must analyze and impart on our students. In this section, we tackle various positions on the AI-university relationship that appear to pass without critique in academic and wider spheres, and we share a position in each case. So, below are some of the typical terminological disarrays untangled. Importantly, none of these terms are orthogonal, nor do they exclusively pick out types of products we may wish to critique or prescribe. So, artificial intelligence... and I'm not going to read this all to you. Artificial neural network. Okay, so that's what the ANN is. Yeah, I'm not great at acronyms, guys. So, interconnected banks of units, matrix multiplications, chatbots, ChatGPT, generative models. I'm not going to read all this out, sorry. Rejection of expertise, ironically including our own. Being in a colonizing discipline first demands and then encourages an attitude that might be called intellectual hubris. Furthermore, since you cannot master all the disciplines you have designs on, you need confidence that your knowledge makes the traditional wisdom of these fields unworthy of serious consideration. Here, too, the AI scientist feels that seeing things through a computational prism so fundamentally changes the rules of the game in the social and behavioral sciences that everything that came before is related to a period of intellectual immaturity. Sherry Turkle, 1984. Every field that comes into contact with AI discourse becomes infected, even within AI, as a field of study. Our colleagues have embraced these systems, uncritically incorporating them into their workflows and their classrooms without input from experts on automation, cognitive science, computer science, gender diversity studies, human-computer interaction, pedagogy, psychology, and law, to name but a few fields with direct relevant expertise. Meanwhile, technology companies have rushed to invest in AI ethics or AI safety to ethics wash their claims, thereby laundering accountability and distracting from real AI ethics while censoring academics and thus violating academic freedom. Ooh, bad, bad, bad. AI extractivism is at play further afield than the subversion described above. It also directly causes environmental and social harms. Water, energy, and occupation of land are all needed for data centers. Yet, industry suggests AI technology can be used to mitigate the climate crisis, and it is creeping into society through data colonialism, stimulating the extraction and commodification of data, giving tech firms immense social power, and through labor exploitation and social injustices. In the academic context, promoting the use of large language models is not aligned with university values and ecological sustainability campaigns. Hence, we cannot remain complicit with the greenwashing rhetoric and actions of the technology industry. Resisting AI technologies means refusing to take a role in the continuing devastation of the environment and the exploitation of labor. When we speak out against the introduction of AI products in our classrooms, we are ridiculed with impunity. However, as Dijorlet Hiemstra explains, we are not the villains. Sounding the alarm about AIs and educational technology is the only sensible thing until we discuss the purpose of education regarding AI, and then it is clear that the author's pedagogical goals and AI use are incompatible. What is urgently needed instead is critical AI literacy, such as we lay out in this paper. Importantly, critical washing, including AI use while being aware of the risks, must be avoided. When we critique AI, we should do so with intellectual honesty and in a principled way. Reflecting on the harms of AI is not self-harm reduction. It may even contribute to rationalizing, normalizing, and enabling harm. Critical reflection without appropriate action is thus quintessentially critical washing. Marcella Suarez et al. Now. In fact, the vast majority of research on AI in education examines issues connected to automation assessment, not learning. We propose that research exploring the use of AI in education is shifted from a technical approach to a socio-cultural and process approach that aims to rebalance skills, qualification, socialization, and subjectification. This should include concepts such as equity, language, multiculturalism, identity, effective domains of learning, citizenship, and social justice for a better understanding of what might be the role, if any, of AI tools in teaching and learning. We call on the educational technology community to demystify AI systems and instead approach those with more criticality and humility. In doing so, we need to shift our attention from the technology industry advertising to robust evidence-based research on developmental processes. Unfortunately, academic contributions from humanities and mathematics and everything in between are all vulnerable to AI technology. Products exist or are being developed that claim to be able to displace many forms of academic labor. While most of these claims are based on thin air, administrators and policymakers see them as opportunities to further cut costs and increase efficiency, in line with the detrimental neoliberal ideology, back to neoliberalism, that self-uses higher education, further fostering rejection of expertise of their staff. Importantly, such dehumanization by AI can happen regardless of intent. A review of the literature shows AI systems are biased and can take part in discriminatory practices that reinforce and normalize dominating hierarchies regarding culture, race, and gender, while posing and being perceived as neutral and objective tools. We reject this debasing and dismantling of expertise, dehumanization of scholars, and remain vigilant against the erosion of academic contributions to understanding the world. We do not have to embrace the future, and we can turn back the tide. That's what I've been saying. Everyone's like, it's going to come whether you like it or not. I'm like, we could all decide not. We've done that before. As a civilization. Related to the rejection of expertise, what must be the sheer magnitude of artificial neural network incompetence that makes them so popular? Jerry A. Fodor in 2000. Related to the rejection of expertise is the rejection of imagining a better future and the rejection of self-determination free from industry forces. Not only AI enthusiasts, but even some scholars whose expertise concentrates on identifying and critically interrogating ideologies and socio-technical relationships, such as historians and gender scholars, unfortunately fall prey to the teleological belief that AI is an unstoppable force. They embrace it because alternative responses seem too difficult, incompatible with industry developments, or non-existent. Instead of falling for this, we should refuse AI adoption in schools and colleges and reject the narrative of its inevitability. Such rejection is possible and has historical precedent, to name just a few successful examples. Amsterdamers kicked out cars, rejecting that cycling through the Dutch capital should be deadly. Organized workers died for the 8-hour workday, the weekend, and other workers' rights. And governments banned chlorofluorocarbons from fridges to mitigate ozone depletion in the atmosphere. And we all know that the tide itself famously turns back. People can undo things, and we will. Besides, there will be no future to embrace if we de-skill our students and ourselves and allow the technology industry's immense contribution to climate crisis and environmental destruction to continue unimpeded. Yes to all of this in this last paragraph right here. We will not have a future if you all overheat the planet and drain all of our water, which, granted, that'll come back probably, but don't mess with my Great Lakes, thank you. When we are told that we cannot ban AI, it's just too attractive. Like with all industry hype, we should both question the premises and caution that the idea of irreversibility points to the observation that, while technological trajectories are never self-determining or inevitable, the difficulties of undoing technological projects grow over time. Lucy Suchman in 2019. It is exactly because the problems continue to grow that we must speak out now. The repetition that somehow things are set in stone needs to be urgently, vociferously, and vigilantly countered, especially the public discourse that goes like this. ChatGPT has happened, and it's the way forward, and we should embrace it. We're going to be creative about our assessments. I'm not against being creative about assessments, but the idea of embracing ChatGPT seems incredibly toxic. I mean, do people not read how these things are made? They depend on eye-watering, this is their own term, at cost of carbon emissions. They are built on massive exploitative ghost labor. Crowdsourced and outsourced labor that follows the patterns of colonial relations. Yes, usually from Africa. Feel free to look back in this list if you're a newcomer. There is a very interesting zine that somebody made about data workers and how exactly that all gets done. And yeah, it's terribly oppressive. It's a horrible work environment, and we need to be, nicer to the global south. Anyway, Dan McKillen et al. Should we fail to turn the tide, we at least took a principled stand, which is one of our core duties to society, to say what we think is the ideal thing to do based on our shared experience. The rest of society might ignore us to collective peril, but say it, we must. Ahistorism and AI hype cycles. When I first started writing about science decades ago, I edited an article in which a computer scientist predicted AI would soon replace experts in law, medicine, finance, and other professions, and that was in 1984. That's kind of how I feel about the linked data revolution, because I'm sitting here looking at AI and I'm like, well, how's that going to intersect with all of the tagging and work we as catalogers do to make linked data more interoperable? And I know at least the 10 years I've been up here, plus some time before that, we've been like, linked data is going to make it Make it work, and it's going to be great. And it's going to be worth all this extra labor. And all we get right now are author cards, and not to knock author cards, but like you could find that information in other places. You don't need a magical author card with everything. When we engage with the public, we know just that people think that AI as a field or technology appeared on the scene in the last 3 years, and they experience confusion, even dissonance, when they discover the field and the technologies have existed for decades, if not centuries, or even millennia. Such a historicism facilitates the hype cycles that have long been fueled by extravagant claims that substitute fiction for science. We have been here before, both with entanglements of AI and statistics, with industry corrupting our academic processes, and with so-called AI summers, hype cycles that pivot from funding booms to complete busts and cessation of research. To understand how industry tries to influence independent research for their benefit, we can look to past examples of entanglement of industry and statistics. Ronald A. Fisher, a eugenicist and the founder of modern statistics. Oh, how interesting that they came out of eugenicists. Okay. Did not know that. Having been paid by the tobacco industry, our other friends claim that because correlation is not causation, therefore smoking does not cause lung cancer. Parallel between tobacco and technology does not end here. Both industries, increased funding of academia was a reaction to increasingly unfavorable public opinion and an increased threat of legislation. The histories of eugenics, statistics, computing, and modern AI are highly interwoven and inexorably intertwined. I probably flubbed that. Feel free to put the pronunciation in the comments. Tracing these genealogies, finding out what is salvageable, is our job as scientists, and Amy Wendling explains if our experience of machines has been outside our experiences of exploitation, this has occurred only on the margins of the vastness of this exploitation, and is therefore conditioned by it. For the second point above on how AI hype cycles appear to go hot and cold every few years, it is also rife with valuable teaching moments. For example, a news story like this would not be out of place in the present. The Navy revealed the embryo of an electronic computer today that expects to be able to walk, talk, see, write, reproduce itself, and be conscious of its existence. So says the New York Times of 1958. This gives me some hope. Maybe I'll be able to get old and not be served by bots. This early example of AI hype was about the perception. Frank Rosenblatt, who is most associated with this, lost hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in government funds due to the subsequent AI winter. These winters are triggered by overpromising and underdelivering, typical capitalist bubbles that we are all familiar with, from the dot-com bubble at the end of the 90s to the subprime mortgage crisis starting in 07. Not only would it be unprofessional to participate in such a reoccurring folly, it would also damage our pedagogy to allow another cycle. The foreseeable AI winter will take with it entire curricula, academic processes and practices, and educators' and learners' livelihoods. Instead, we support historical awareness of the discourse of inevitability discussed herein. And that's one of the few things that I would love to teach as a semester-long course, but I have no idea how I would even propose it here because I'm not in the right department. But a history of tech course, I would love to teach that because I think people don't quite understand how we've interacted with technology and co-developed alongside it for years. Generations. Okay, this historicism is not limited to the application of AI to education. We have seen a similar push of other technologies, such as automated teaching machines by, amongst others, B.F. Skinner. Despite almost a century of trials, teaching and grading by computers have not reached classrooms, and the arguments made in favor of teaching machines mirror those used for AI today, and also for MOOCs not that long ago. For example, Pressey contrasted his machines with mass media, by which he meant radio, stressing his systems were personalized. The real effect seems to be that it has been the means of turning the attention of many psychologists from research on animal learning in the laboratory to an examination of human learning in the classroom situation. In other words, rather than contributing to teaching and learning, automation in the classroom was benefiting the creators of the technology. See, that's the thing with AI. The people who are hyping it hard are, of course, the companies that want you to use it. So keep a little critical reasoning hats on, folks. All right, anthropomorphism and other circular reasoning. While opacity is a distinguishing feature of many other areas of science and technology, the myths surrounding computing may stem less from the fact that it is an opaque, esoteric subject, and more from the way in which it can be seen to blur the boundary between people and machines. To be sure, most people do not understand the workings of a television set or how to program their video cassette recorders, shout out to the day, properly, but they do not usually believe that these machines can have intelligence. I would argue against that. I always talk to every single inanimate object in my life like it does have intelligence. And electronic academics definitely do. The public myths about computing and AI are also no doubt due to the ways in which computers are often depicted in mass media, such as an abstract source of wisdom or as a mechanical brain, and that is Brian Bloomfield in 1987. So there is circular reasoning at play when we suggest machines can think, reason, or argue like humans can, and therefore treat them and test them like humans. Within human-machine interaction research, often AI technology output is compared to human performance, mistakenly assuming such benchmarks are informative about AI's capabilities, and it's not because they reason entirely differently than we do. However, correlations with human output mean little substantiate claims of human likeness, especially when the input to the AI models is tested is the output of human cognition in the first place. There are so many cases of this from daily life and the history of science that appear shocking. Such results are taken so uncritically to be cognition. An example from the 1960s. Weizenbaum was afraid of this new rhetorical trend of AI being seen as human by the public, blaming it both on overhyping by scientists and the gullibility of the users. That was another article I read that essentially says the more you know about AI, the more suspicious you are of it, and the less you know about it, the more magic it looks like. Which makes sense. Anthropomorphization of AI systems, typified with what happened with Eliza, caused many at the time to be excited about the prospect of replacing therapists with software. Now, I'm more scared of that. More than a half century has passed since then, and the idea of an automated therapist is still palatable to some, likely, thankfully, legally, and ethically impossible without human supervision, and still very much out of reach technically. That is Lilia Escori et al. In 2023. So, to add insult to injury, many metaphorical or jargonistic phrases, especially used to describe neural networks like train, learn, hallucinate, reason, are applied to machines and result in distorting how we perceive these machines, humanizing them while dehumanizing us. As Guess and Martin explain, a mirror, not even an AI mirror, is not what it reflects. These jumps in logic can be found in many jocular stories, such as when a person first encounters a television. Would they assume the device contained little people? Or would a person assume someone was trapped inside a telephone because it emits human voices? Although we do not fully understand human thinking, ain't that the truth? This does not license attributing thinking to whatever machine or technology uncritically through anthropomorphization. Such arguments from ignorance lack all scientific rigor, no duh. The only argument from ignorance that science permits is caution, more research, and cares appropriate actions when something is truly unknown. We take a stand against such anthropomorphism and inappropriate conclusions and question why the parallel to machines is taken so lightly in such a harmful context, risking de-skilling and dehumanization of us and our students. And we do not need more dehumanization. We have enough of that going on right now already, and a good chunk of it is because so many of us were locked down during the pandemic, during our formative years, and those kids are acting up, if you ask me. Supposedly all students are cheating now. No serious scholar or scientist in their right mind would want large language models to produce their texts, and hence also no student pursuing an academic education would want to do so. Yeah, that's Van Roosh in theory. Students have always cheated. Bending and breaking the rules is human nature, and by the same token, educators are not police. We are not here to obsessively surveil our students. Education is based on mutual trust. Therefore, our duty is to build mutually shared values with our students and colleagues. Especially when education is not valued, we as educators are obliged to show our students that they are not just here to receive a degree. Education is more than qualification. It is about preparing students to become a capable and active member of society. We emphasize that there are two victims of plagiarism: the original authors whose work is taken without credit, and the audience who is being deceived. Plagiarism at its most fundamental level is a lie. It is taking the works or ideas of others and passing them off as your own, either directly or indirectly. The misdeed itself is in the lie. I created this when it is known to be untrue. However, that lie isn't being told to the original victim. It's a lie about the victim, claiming that they didn't create it or their contributions didn't matter, but it's not a lie to them. Instead, it's a lie to the audience, which is the second victim and the actual target of the con. I never thought of it like this. I actually kind of want to excerpt that and possibly use that if I ever teach an English class ever again, an English one-shot. I barely get to teach at all. Anyway, Jonathan Bailey. When a ghostwriter essay mill is used, content has been obtained by the original author, usually in exchange for payment. Acceptability remains contingent on the social contract with the audience. Ghostwriting is usually acceptable because we all know politicians don't write their own speeches and celebrities rarely write their own books. In contrast, press release plagiarism deceives the audience by presenting the work of a biased source as being that of the perceived to be unbiased journalist. Academic integrity standards enshrined in universities' rules and scholarly journal policies establish the unequivocal contract that students' and researchers' work is solely their own. There is no debate that the use of an essay mill constitutes violation of these policies. Use of a large language model-based chatbot to complete an assignment presented as student work is an affront to the first victim as well as the second victim. The automated plagiarism goes against the principles of scientific integrity, which serve as the basis of our teaching and academic practice. Large language models and chatbot use in the classroom means accepting that both students and teachers can openly appropriate work that is not theirs and requires disclosing to society, a secondary audience, that thinking and integrity are not required. Using AI products that generate academic content is against any conceivable set of rules we already have in place to regulate fraud and make sure that students actually, when following the rules, learn what they are expected to learn. Failure to see this buys into the hype, and if retrofitted onto past cases, brings up essay mills as a permissible educational tool, clearly anti-pedagogical and utterly bizarre. Promoting the use of large language models in the classroom will only increase illiteracy in young adults and teenagers and deepen the crisis in education. Further, it will boost technology industry dependence. Yeah, and that's a real scary thing, because if these kids can't read and write when they're hitting college and it's all just bots talking back to us, that's worrisome in a lot of areas, let's put it that way. You want your people to know things. Writing as a visual and performing arts, all forms of human expression, forms a bedrock of the learning process, and many students, regardless of the mantra that supposedly all are using it, can tell AI is harmful. Go students! And useless. In one survey by Study.com, for instance, 72% of college students believe that ChatGPT should be banned from their college's network. That is pretty darn surprising. Despite all current hysteria around students cheating, they aren't the ones to blame. They did not lobby for the introduction of laptops when they were in elementary school. It's not their fault they had to go on to Zoom during the pandemic. I'm so sorry, kids. They didn't create the AI tools, nor were they at the forefront of hyping technological innovation. None of the students I spoke with seemed lazy or passive. Wasu. The quote above touches on and neutralizes one of the many marketing strategies that introduce so-called technologies in the classroom. Technology companies are not shy of falsely claiming students are lazy or lack writing skills. Such a mantra serves only to sell products or cover up an excuse overworking them by our colleagues with no reflection on reality. We condemn those claims and reassert students' agency vis-a-vis corporate control. Do we have to teach it because otherwise our students ain't gonna get no jobs? That's our worry over here. Headline after headline proclaim robots are coming from our jobs in stories about hyper-intelligent AI and logistics automation. Will all these trends eventually lead to a world where bots and algorithms do our dirty work, making our lives easier and more prosperous? Or will the machines push us out of our jobs and deposit us into a dystopia? We are chewing over the machinery question all over again in barely updated language, says Brian Merchant. Of course, we have to teach our students about AI technologies. Teaching about AI technologies should just be like how we teach no smoking or the causal links between lung cancer and cigarette smoke. Yet we do not teach students how to roll cigarettes and smoke them. That'll be a fun class. In fact, the whole selling point of the technology industry is the modern AI technologies, like talking to another person, often a servant. Thus, what training is there to really have under such a frame? What is there to teach with respect to typing some text into a box and then mindlessly copy-pasting the output? Such a skillless relationship disregards our pedagogical commitment to foster a critical stance in our students and colleagues. Some counteract that the students can and must use AI critically and responsibly, such as by judging the output for themselves. Going one step further, some even maintain such exercises are useful to train critical thinking itself, thereby buying into the usefulness of AI, despite admitting its untrustworthiness, glossing over the many problems we describe here. And thinking about implications for the design of learning environments and curriculum design, we first need to pause and think about what we would really like the AI to do, or to put it differently, what might be the added value and use of AI in education, if any. In thinking about the future of education, we ought to be engaging with culturally relevant and sustainable pedagogies that have the potential to embrace the diversity of learners' attitudes, cultural capital, and migration backgrounds through culturally and personally meaningful learning experience. Hence, taking students or teachers out of social context and in return giving them AI products would be disastrous for education and society more generally. Relatedly, the extreme obfuscation of labor appears to be a defining factor of AI technology. AI stands in contrast to a tool like a saw involved in the predominantly overt labor of woodworking, that is, to cut wood, where the person cutting also puts in labor with actual control over the output of the labor, often more than the creator of the saw. AI users, on the other hand, are customers much more like the person buying the end product of the woodwork than the carpenters themselves. If not, in some sense, more so, as they remain unaware of and even tricked into thinking that they performed the relevant labor. The distortion can be seen in use of obfuscatory phrases like prompt engineer, which imply labor and skill. Being a customer not only requires no training, is not a skill, but is also a completely different labor relation masquerading as a skill. Ooh, I kind of like this. This is a little heated here. Because, yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about prompt engineering. It's like, that's not a skill. Use your critical thinking. Thus, seeing students merely as customers of AI products, these skills not only them, but us as teachers, as there's nothing to teach in society at large, as no one will be left to write and think. Sad world. This is reflected in the advertising deployed by AI companies who claim prompts are akin to talking to a computer and require no skills like programming to do so. What future and what jobs will there be if no human capacities are really done away with? Crucial professions necessary to maintaining a well-functioning society, democracy, healthcare, and justice systems would deteriorate and degenerate. The necessary creative, empathetic, and intellectual skills needed to ensure these professions can serve their societal purposes and uphold relevant standards would be lost. Ironically, in a world full of AI displacements and AI misinformation, actually more skill will be needed to catch, counter, and compensate for the problems and mistakes introduced by AI technologies. But as AI technologies increasingly infiltrate academia, students will be robbed of the opportunity to learn those necessary skills. We take a stand against such developments in which students cannot learn by definition and reject the frames that AI use is necessary to obtain a job. AI is more like a calculator than you think. But I just use AI for boilerplate, you whimper, clutching your Copilot subscription. Listen to yourself. If you're writing the same boilerplate every day like some industrial cog monkey, automate it yourself. Write a library, invent a macro, reclaim some dignity. If AI is doing your boring parts, what exactly is left for you to do? When you outsource the thinking, you outsource the learning. JJ. There are absolutely important differences between a large language model and a calculator. Notably, the second is not stochastic outside, for example, the battery running out or a cosmic ray flipping a bit. Contrary to a large language model under normal conditions, a calculator performs pre-specified functions reliably. But, and herein lies the rub, we ban calculators and teaching children addition and other basic arithmetic operations for a reason. Are we still doing that? Those of you who have kids, please put in the comment whether or not they're still being forced to memorize their times tables. Because I don't think they are. And this is like addition and subtraction, but we weren't allowed calculators until after we got out of the times tables. And that would be like around 4th or 5th grade. So let me know how that is, because I'm curious. Otherwise, they would not learn these arithmetic operations, and calculators do not help to understand basic mathematical rules for the same reasons we do not allow the use of spell check software for children learning to spell, or keyboard typing when learning to write by hand. Do we still teach people to write by hand? Children learning to spell, I think we've almost given up on. Maybe that's a European thing. I wish we were better about that, but literally everything now has spell check on it, so that one I think we almost have to give up on. On the plus side, it's nice to see people writing full sentences. Apparently that's how you can tell we're old Gen X dinosaurs. So the same reasoning applies to banning AI products in education. Large language models do not improve one's writing ability, much like taking a taxi does not improve one's driving ability. Ooh, good analogy. Students should hone their writing, thinking, and other academic skills at every opportunity. As teachers, we are duty-bound to help them realize why they should. Importantly, writing creates a space for students to assimilate and create knowledge independently of industry influence and give students a way to empower their voices. I kind of like this. This obviously wasn't something we had to emphasize in college 20-odd years ago when I was there, but now it's like, think for yourself. Otherwise, the only person thinking for you is whoever's running your AI bot. Given the technology, importantly, writing creates a space to empower their voices. Okay, sorry. Just trying to find myself where I was. Given the technology industry's concentration of power, infrastructure, and control, we must promote writing at university along with teaching critical AI literacy. What holds for writing is, of course, true for any cognitive skill to be learned in education, such as programming skills, and these two suffer de-skilling if not continuously practiced. Use it or lose it theory. I stared at my terminal, facing those red error messages that I hate to see, and Amazon Web Services error glared back at me. I didn't want to figure it out without AI's help. After 12 years of coding, I'd somehow become worse at my own craft, and this isn't hyperbole. This is the new reality for software developers. The manigul, and I can relate to that. Not that I coded, it's been a long time. To show how serious the situation has become, one only need think about our last round of marking essays by AI undergraduate students. What jumps out of the page for us is something that contradicts the rhetoric our colleagues promote. Namely, it is evident that students need more essay work assigned to them, not less. Almost every essay was poor in some dimension and does not befit students in their final years of undergraduate study. The writing is often superficial, the language does not reflect students' stage in knowledge, citations are frequently misused, and most shockingly, because it is so easy, the reference style is not applied correctly. This means that the constellation of skills required to write a good academic essay has not been nurtured enough or is atrophied. What this means is that regardless of factual large language model use by the students, their ability to write essays is on the floor, and not as many seem to claim, at ceiling where one cannot differentiate a good essay from a plagiarized or otherwise dishonest attempt of an essay. Importantly, the training of writing skills should be done in the context of critical reckoning with the norms and pressures surrounding the work expected of students, such as high study loads, so-called student excellence, financial pressure to graduate, etc. In this context, it is also important to be wary of arguments that wrongly position LLMs as making education more democratic, accessible, and equitable by removing language barriers, removing unequal access to mentorship, and increased diversity, equity, and inclusion in general. Large language models are neither a real nor just solution to these issues, given the myriad problems and falsehoods we raise here, and given the facts that the harms associated with large language models feed directly into the roots of these inequalities to begin with. When a perceived lack of writing skills is penalized along racist, ableist, or otherwise discriminatory lines, students may be driven to LLMs because they allegedly produce professional text. We need to commit to creating an environment in which such rhetoric and injustice are tackled at their roots. Alright, on to section 4, protecting the ecosystem of human knowledge, 5 principles. We must protect and cultivate the ecosystem of human knowledge. AI models can mimic the appearance of scholarly work, but they are, by construction, unconcerned with truth. The result is a torrential outpouring of unchecked but convincing-sounding information. At best, such output is accidentally true, but generally citationless, divorced from human reasoning, and the web of scholarship it steals from. At worst, it is confidently wrong. Both outcomes are dangerous to the ecosystem. Yes, and Van Rouge again. Knowledge production is supposed to be safeguarded by international codes of conduct for research integrity. Such codes forbid, for instance, fabrication of data, falsification of results, plagiarism, and generally distortion of the scientific record. Many argue that new rules are required to regulate academic AI use, but pre-existing guidelines fit the bill. For instance, the Netherlands Code of Conduct for Research Integrity is based on 5 core principles, each of which speaks to AI usage in one or more ways. And we're measuring the Netherlands because the majority of the authors are from the Netherlands, so... Honesty implies we do not secretly use AI technologies without disclosure, and one does not make unfounded claims about presumed capabilities of AI technologies. Also follows from responsibility from MIT Economics, where perhaps 2028 was done. Scrupulousness, there's a fun word to say, demands, among other things, scientists only use AI products whose functionality is well specified and validated for specific scientific usage. This includes terminological precision about what formalisms, models, and technologies are used, about rigorous argumentation to motivate why these technologies are appropriate for scientific purposes at hand. Transparency requires AI technologies are open source and computationally reproducible. Here we must recall the technology industry's obfuscatory tactics. The name of the current producer of ChatGPT, OpenAI, sounds like it's engaged in open science, but as we have now seen, open never really means what you think it does. And I think they shouldn't be allowed to use that name, because that drives me crazy, because I'm always like, wait, which one is that? And then you have to remember, Anthropic does this, OpenAI does like the worst of the 3 big providers. But yeah, it's not actually open. It's a misnomer. Independence means that scientists can ensure their research is unbiased by AI company agendas, and any potential conflicts of interest are declared in publications and other public communications, following from honesty and transparency. Responsibility precludes scientists from using AI products whose use is irresponsible, e.g. harmful to people, animals, and the environment, or otherwise in violation of legal guidelines. Minimizing harm is vital for both engineers and theoreticians. All of these principles rely on the premise of reciprocity. This is why AI as an opaque and extractive technology fails to meet the basic threshold of academia. Relatedly, students should be encouraged and able to independently apply core integrity principles to all relevant aspects of their scientific education in a context-sensitive manner. This means every university graduate must be aware of relevant scientific codes of conduct, have the competence to comply with them, and recognize violations. This is especially important for thesis research, but ideally relevant skills are trained as an integral part throughout academic degree programs. However, with the proliferation of AI products and their uncritical adoption in academia, we become unable to help younger generations of scholars in learning to uphold and appreciate scientific integrity. As a result, we'll be de-skilling the whole academic profession, a direct threat to the ecosystem of human knowledge. We got this far, and now we're just going to put it all in the bin. Of course, the academic world has well-known structural incentives to cheat, including high workloads, publisher pairs contracts, and framings of academic research as an elite competitive marketplace for individual prestige. These institutional conditions have encouraged and rewarded unethical behavior long before the current hype cycle, but the normalization of AI usage and the ubiquitous false claims regarding AI capabilities seem to further obfuscate the boundaries of proper conduct. Thus, what is true for plagiarism and essay mills for students holds for paper mills harboring journals, the literature, and us as academics. and AI turbocharges these already understood and proscribed harms. These entanglements between the technology industry and the academic publishing houses require urgent attention. With the global rise of fascistic regimes and growing threats to academic freedom, safeguarding the integrity of scientific knowledge is more important now than ever. With dismay, we witness our university leadership making soulless choices that hollow out our institutions from within and erode the critical and self-reflective fabric of academia. Tell me how you really feel. Notable among these choices is the relentless push to uncritically adopt AI technologies in education under false narratives of so-called progress and efficiency. Yeah, and if you haven't seen it already, they discovered that experts actually know what to do on their job, or 20% slow because you have to fact check the AI, which I find very interesting. Notable among these choices is the relentless push to uncritically adopt. Oh yeah, as I already said, that false narratives have been even repeated by Dutch university labor unions in labor agreements with friends like that who needs enemies. In addition to scientific integrity, university core values such as sustainability, openness, responsibility, critical reflection, diversity, equity, and inclusion should naturally constrain AI use in academia. The Kana Young Academy is sounding the alarm about digital technologies in higher ed, noting that decision-making in higher education typically considers the financial and logistical aspects similar to buying furniture or office supplies, but it falls short when it comes to addressing consequences for governance and ethical implications. By normalizing the use of AI products in academia, universities contravene codes of conduct and contradict their own missions and betray their core values, harming science and society in the process. See, I don't know how widespread this is outside the U.S., but at least in the American universities I've worked in over the years, it is very much a business-oriented mindset, even in the ones that are allegedly not for profit. I worked at ITT Tech, which was totally for profit and was a weird place to work for other reasons. But yeah, keep that in mind. All right, machine yearning for a better present. We are almost done. I'm sorry it's a longish one. This set of AI products and technologies stands before us, in other words, in what Marx would call a fetishized form. What is in reality produced by relations among people appears before us in a fantastic form as relations among things. In line with this, AI technology is much more akin to a Ouija board than anything else, promoting and enabling mysticism, pseudoscience, and pseudo-intellectualism, obfuscating the human in the loop, which includes the user and creators of the data who do most of the intelligence and provide all the inputs, and combining all the above, tricking and scamming us because we do not recognize that mirror reflects our own collective intelligence back at us in distorted and damaging forms. We and our students can choose not to use these technologies, just like we have banned smoking from public spaces. Not exactly my favorite comparison. We can foster that process of banning both the choosing to individually quit smoking and by demanding regulation of the tobacco industry. Hence, we can also choose to unshackle ourselves and others from harmful technology industry frames, product, and lifestyles. Yet we acknowledge that the entrepreneurs who have disrupted key elements of the economy have accumulated unprecedented levels of wealth and power in the process. But these men, and I don't see too many ladies, are running the tech companies. Just like 200 years ago, they are almost all men. I just said that. Have power on a scale that a 19th century titan could not even begin to dream of. Whether these behemoths are deploying AI or automating work outright, they have a level of control over most people's working lives that is unrivaled in its breadth and scope. Now, since feudalism at least. Brian Merchant. Importantly, and contrary to popular belief, high technology is often as socially regressive as it is technically revolutionary or progressive. Interesting thought. This is one of the many reasons why we must resist and reject these technologies and why we as academics should further unpack why AI causes nightmares. Ultimately, these systems cannot really replace humans, replace the quality of human craft and thinking, so many of their capacities are overblown, and displacement will only happen if we accept the premises. We can and should reject the AI output is good enough, not only because it is not good, but also because there's inherent value in thinking for ourselves. That's the other scary thing. We see all this sort of one world order type stuff going on in the technology sector, and they're all like, yeah, no, it's okay, just outsource your brain. Yeah, we do not need to be any less with it, let's put it that way. We cannot all produce poems of the quality of a professional poet, and maybe for a complete novice, an LLM output will seem better than one's own attempt, but perhaps that is what being human is, learning something new and sticking with it, even if we do not become a world-famous poets. That work, the real work of teaching and learning, cannot be automated, says Jesse Hagopian. Yeah, and a lot of it, at least from what I've heard, is that fear of the first draft, the white page fear. All those of us who spent a lot of time in English classes have definitely experienced this, where it's like, how do I even get started? And I'll give the AI some credit with that and brainstorm. It does give you a little more confidence in getting started, but On the other hand, half the time I start feeding my ideas in the AI, and I'm like, you already have mostly formed sentences. You may as well just go with it. But anyway, what do you guys think? Should academia basically say no to AI? Because in theory, we should be working towards a higher collective psychological good here and not just trying to make more money for the corporate world. Which, capitalism is okay. I'm not knocking capitalism, but when they exploit us and scan our libraries and feed the entire bot machines just to make money, we might be at conflicting purposes. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for tuning in.